The other day I was doing some research for a video that I'm working on. I decided to look up the history of the developer of the game. And I was shocked to find that the developer made a certain game that, well, I didn't expect from the developer. It was a game that was, let's just say, something that is not only horrible, it's one of the worst games I've ever played. So I thought, what game was made by one developer that would surprise people to be in their catalog of games? As opposed to peanut butter and jelly, that they go together like peanut butter and actual butter. Now, some of them may be great games in of themselves, but this list is to highlight contrast, when two opposite ends of the spectrum collide. Now, I tried to avoid the biggest developers in questions like the Nintendos of the world on this list, just because they are big enough to have that variety, but smaller sub-companies for those companies may make an appearance. It's also got to have a game that I've played at least one of the games in question, so if you know of a combo that didn't make the list, it's most likely because of that, or the fact that I just didn't know about them. If you have them, leave them in the comments section below. So without further ado, 10 game developer game combos in no particular order. Flying Wild Hog. Flying Wild Hog is a relatively new studio, but they are most known for their focus on FPS games of a more classic flavor. They are responsible for the rebirth of the sword-wielding, one-liner spouting Wang in Shadow Warrior, and they've got a sequel coming right around the corner that was my most anticipated game after E3 2015. They've also had Hard Reset, which was an alternative FPS in a cyberpunk style. So they are going for FPS games, violence, and over-the-top fun. A little bit of a mature audience, let's say, even if the dick jokes run wild with a game or two. Which is why this seems completely out of their style. Yes, Juju, a childlike co-op platformer with a bright and colorful style, brought to you by the same company that has you cutting off the limbs of demons. They released a game that now had you joyfully running through the forest, collecting crystals in a game that didn't really have a lot of challenge to it, and basically was a relaxing experience to play with your kid. Showing the lighter side of the company, it didn't get a lot of attention, but it shows that anything that's thrown at these developers, that it's not just going to get made if pigs fly. Oh yes, expect more of that groan-inducing humor on this list. Gaijin Entertainment. Gaijin Entertainment is known for their realistic military games. Their most famous game is the free-to-play War Thunder, the accurate tank and airplane shooter that has you firing shells across a huge field with various other teammates. It's not their only title of this type either, as it's got Birds of Steel and Apache Air Assault under their belt as well. So they specialize in military simulators of sorts. Well, except for two games, one being a sequel to the other, and what caused this list to be created.
You can't stop me! Nothing can stop the dark!
Yep, they are behind the infamous X-Blades. The attempt into the action genre didn't exactly go well for one of the first games produced by the studio, earning a measly 54 on Metacritic for the PC. But for the precision of the mechanics of tanks and war that they get into in War Thunder, they failed miserably with the lack of precision all over the place in X-Blades, which extended to pretty much every mechanic. As I've mentioned time and time before, I am still working on that video breaking down that gameplay. I'm just paranoid about the script that I've written over and over and over again. Humor for me takes time, if you can call it that. Iron Galaxy Studios. Iron Galaxy Studios doesn't have a lot of games developed under its belt, but one of the most famous ones would have to be the simple Divekick, which basically takes the mechanics of fighting games and brings them down to a simple level. The simplest levels, in fact. With it basically being the first person to get a hit, it brings games down to its simplest form, and yet there's a little bit of complexity that develops because of it. But okay, they don't have a lot of games under their belt, but you've probably heard them for one other reason. They are the company who was tasked with bringing Arkham Knight to the PC. Yeah, that one. The one that got removed from Steam. The one that is still not on the storefront to this day. Now, that can be for a variety of reasons, but when you see a developer who has a good game that people have enjoyed under their belt be associated as something as bad as that, it sucks. It truly does, that they'll be known for that from years to come. But that's the industry that we live in nowadays. Alright, Iron Galaxy Studios, hopefully you can recover from that. Hopefully. Cellar Door Games. Cellar Door Games has a lot of games under their belt, but they are most known for one of the best roguelite platforming experiences and great replayability in their most famous title, Rogue Legacy. Going through the procedurally generated hallways with the various modifiers and armors that you could have, throwing spells at the enemy as your legacy of heroes attempts to take down the big baddie with nothing but fun. So you'll have to put on your big boy pants if you hope to get through these dungeons. Which is appropriate considering one of the Flash titles that the developers have put out in the past. Yep, the same developers who brought you Rogue Legacy brought you the classic Don't Shit Your Pants, which is a great view on simplicity of objectives in games. I mean, seriously, it's in the title. In fact, you can find a room within the halls of Rogue Legacy that pays homage to this game, as well as past games that Cellar Door Games has created. I mean, granted, it's not my cup of tea, and not something I would recommend for people to go out and play right away, but it did its job, and frankly, it teaches life lessons for years to come. Ninja Theory. Ninja Theory. You've run into some rabid fans over your lifetime. In particular, DMC, Devil May Cry. Although it's not the Dante that people knew and loved. Maybe it didn't do exactly well for series fans up to that point, but let's be honest here. The game's combat? Still wonderful, and it did well in keeping the series' combat as important as ever, even if it might have had it toned down compared to what the series was known for. But you know what's funny? It's not the only series that they've got a rabid fan base that they're a part of.
Join the dark side. Here's where the fun begins.
Yep, they are part of the Disney Infinity 3.0 magic. Weird, huh? Despite taking on very strong storylines from Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, to the more goofy yet somehow serious storyline of DMC, it's weird to see them take on a project which is basically working off nostalgia and a different type of gameplay made for children and fans of the Disney brand. I mean, most of their other games are more grown up in nature, with the exception of their contribution here. But just like those classic Disney tales, Ninja Theory can be the beautiful princess that they want to be. Just by sheer magic. Oh, and hard work. Oh, and money. Cryo Team. The team known for the Serious Sam franchise. High action and a bunch of FPS fun. A lot of modern day FPS games have forgotten some of the roots of the genre, and while it may not be the most intelligent of gameplay experiences, Serious Sam 3 BFG Edition keeps a focus on fast-paced action and blowing enemy upon enemy upon enemy away. Some have called it mindless, which I disagree with, but it's funny, because with the mindless accusations thrown against it, you then find out what the latest game from Cryo Team is.
I wonder, who will you be, our children? Will you love us for having created you? Will the world you build be like ours, or so different that today we cannot even imagine it?
Yep, the Talos Principle. The game which has you puzzle your way through various levels as your mind is taken to the absolute limit of logic and reasoning. It's possible that Cryo Team got sick of the mindless statement that was thrown against them, and decided to shut up their critics with a game that tested your mind. Or it may be because the mechanics for the Talos Principle developed from work that was being done for Serious Sam 4, as they were experimenting with the use of interactive objects. Now all I can think of is Half-Life puzzles, fantastic, and then exploding the entire puzzle with a rocket launcher in frustration. I have no idea why I'd think of that. Anyway, Hemont Games. This company, who I probably butchered the pronunciation of, is known for mostly two genres in question: city building and real-time strategy. Their most famous series is a city builder of a different persuasion in the Tropicos series. Playing as a ruthless dictator, attempting to manage your country is a little bit different from the Sim cities out there. But you know what's surprising? The last game they produced is completely different from everything else they've done. Then again, it's also a little bit different within its genre in its entirety.
At first, you're the hero, the savior. But when the job is done, things quickly change.
Victor Vron is a different kind of action RPG that I can recommend, and it makes you wonder exactly what the developer learned from their past city builders and strategy elements to make this game work as well as it does in the genre, to make it stand out from the rest. Sometimes, even though your bread and butter is in a genre, Helmont Games have shown that putting a developer into a box may be the worst thing people can do, or you'll end up without some great gaming experiences like Victor Vron. In fact, I'm still enjoying it to this day. Starbreeze Studios. One of Total Biscuit's favorite games of all time is Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, created by the smaller and unknown developer Starbreeze Studios. Look, let's face it, it takes a pretty special game to hit the top of people's lists, especially someone like Total Biscuit, which by the way, please send some love his way, he really needs it. A very different take on interactive storytelling and gameplay. It touches the heart in a variety of ways, and that's a theme within most of the games under the Starbreeze Studios umbrella. And this includes a more darker tale on classic comic books. And when I mean darker, I mean much, much darker. Almost like pure darkness. Oh hey, the darkness. Segways!
Remember. Past. Present. Future.
The Darkness is one of those really underrated FPS games that not many people have played, but they should. The solid gameplay introduces demon partners that give you special abilities to cut through your enemies. The game's plot isn't necessarily a happy one, and despite its placement on this list, there's a bit in common between these two games in question with their darker, yet different takes on the themes of love and family and the horrors that we have to go through in our everyday lives. Even when the genres are completely different, the art style is completely different, and the gameplay is completely different, they're surprisingly the same under the hood in several ways. From Software. The guys who've brought you some of the most difficult games in the past 10 years, From Software is known for its combat systems and huge creatures to bring down. Bloodborne is the latest big hit from the studio, as the PlayStation 4 exclusive got big hits with not only the critics, but the fans alike, with some more emphasis on dodging and a lack of blocking, and a more active form of combat. Now, From Software has messed around in the various types of games over the past several years, with games like the Armored Core series. But there's a couple of games that stand out in their lineup compared to the others, and in particular, there's one that stands out. Yes, whatever the adventures of Cookies and Cream is. Basically, the idea here is you bring the cute little rabbits to the end of the map before time runs out. It's apparently an underrated game of its generation, and I can't argue against that, I haven't played it myself. But if you were to look at this, and think the same developer would create one of the hardest games of 2015, you'd probably think that I wasn't dipping into the Cookies and Cream ice cream, but that I'd be hitting a rocky road of drugs. Actually, Rocky Road really describes pretty much every game in the Dark Souls series. I may be hungry for some ice cream right now. We have no ice cream in the house. I'll stop talking about ice cream now. Yoox. I've been interested a little bit in wrestling for a while now. A soap opera with people doing stunts and beating the crap out of each other? Sure, it's all for show, but frankly, I haven't had a problem with it. And of course, there's been some fun games in the wrestling genre for games as well. Yoox has been known for several wrestling games in the past, and has been known for the main WWE series for the past several years. Some of them have been good, some of them have been a glitchy mess. In fact, realistic fighting games have been their bread and butter, from UFC fighters to alternate experiences like Rumble Roses. But they've got one title that stands out from the rest. The Dog Island, a role-playing game about customizing your dog with accessories and playing mini-games of various sorts. It's so far from wrestling and the other games that Yoox has produced. If you know the game, you probably know it from the Game Grumps video on it, but it actually has a 70% on Metacritic, surprisingly. Yes, this game actually reviewed alright, surprisingly, from the company known for its wrestling games. Maybe dogs and wrestling have something more in common than meets the eye. And no, not Road Dogg. So there you go, 10 different and strange combinations of video games for the same developer. Now that's not all of them, of course. There are ones like Super Metroid and even Lemmings, but these are the ones that particularly stood out to me. If there are ones that stand out to you, leave them in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left hand side as well. And if you've missed my last video, take a look at the right hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.